Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar, I'm Jed Morgan, and the Nielsen data is out for The Last of Us premiere, and rather than doing my customary spiel of mocking a studio for not reaching even that top 10 threshold, as I did with many of the Marvel shows, or calling them abject liars as I did with Netflix and their Witcher Blood Origin premiere, with The Last of Us, I just have to sit here in abject confusion, because the numbers do not line up with what HBO themselves put out. Now, as much as I stand behind that initial breakdown of 4 million viewers being poor for that premiere as reported by HBO, I cannot also refute the fact that the word of mouth for this show has been extraordinary, as its viewership just goes up and up with every single week to astonishing levels, even competing with House of the Dragon in several instances. I cannot refute either of those, but when you compare the week 1 House of the Dragon to the week 1 Last of Us, there are some confusing things that come up with those numbers, as well as just confusing between the Last of Us HBO numbers and the Last of Us Nielsen, but it's in a stranger direction than I've ever found. I've never seen a studio lie in a negative way towards their show, and I don't believe HBO is necessarily lying in this case, but there is some confusion here that cannot be reconciled between these two numbers. The numbers of the Nielsen's and the numbers of the HBO cannot reconcile with each other, and this lack of reconciliation doesn't help The Last of Us, it just creates confusion. Now, as much as I'd like to take this opportunity to mock HBO, I can't do that because it's not clear where the fault lies or what in the world is happening. The only way that this would be possible is if people were watching The Last of Us on repeat over and over again. But then again, several of those views would be counted into that initial 4 million or that 10 million from the end of the week consolidated numbers. But we have this article here from Deadline who puts it right here. The confusing part is The Last of Us debuts at number 6 on Nielsen streaming charts. That's not great, but then you have to add in that HBO also streams the show on the cable side of things as well as HBO Max. So it's never the full complete numbers on Nielsen, but even without adding in the cable aspect of things, The Last of Us is doing way better than even reported by HBO itself, and way better than House of the Dragon. It's very, very confusing. It doesn't make any sense. And they go on to confirm outpacing House of the Dragon viewership. Now, with House of the Dragon, Nielsen reported that premiere got around 700 million minutes watched, and that is incredibly strange. That is incredibly strange with all things considered, and it was really good at the time. It was doing better than Rings of Power in a lot of instances, and then especially if you added in the supposed HBO cable numbers, it was doing far, far better than the Rings of Power at the time. But The Last of Us, it was reported that it initially got 4 million views that opening night, and then it's 10 million consolidated views as of the next week. That is an impressive viewership of overnight versus consolidated. But the House of the Dragon also got 10 million views that its opening day and got up over 20 million in its consolidated. So that's much, much better. But for some reason, The Last of Us is destroying House of the Dragon in the minutes watched category, which is very, very strange. So once again, House of the Dragon got around 700 million, and HBO's The Last of Us got around 837 million minutes watched. But the problem with that is it came out just before the week over turnover from Sunday to Monday. Now, I am incredibly torn on whether or not to add in the confirmed Sunday viewership from the previous week into this week's viewership to create the grand total for The Last of Us's opening week, because again, the House of the Dragon also aired on a very similar time on Sunday and would be falling into the same category. So do we count either both of their opening hours numbers with their full week numbers, or do we do it for neither of them? It's not really fair either way, but regardless, the combined viewership for The Last of Us from those initial Sunday hours, which were added in the previous week and this week's, come over 1 billion minutes watched. That is insanely impressive. That is a lot higher than House of the Dragon. It doesn't make any sense when the House of the Dragon started out more than double and ended out more than double than The Last of Us in both overnight and consolidated viewership. Is everyone watching House of the Dragon on cable and everyone watching The Last of Us on HBO Max? Are people watching The Last of Us on repeat on HBO Max? These numbers don't necessarily make sense. And then we have the full numbers here over on Nielsen. We have Ginny and Georgia doing insanely well at 1.8 billion minutes watched. That is insanely impressive. That is insanely impressive. I can't refute that that is incredibly well, and I've never even seen this show and barely even heard of it until recent months. Apparently, it's doing very well. That 90s show, a lot of the 70s shows fan that I know, including myself, aren't even touching this. So the fact that it got this high, really impressive. The Walking Dead, it's on its way out, out, apparently still doing well. Vikings Valhalla, not a good show in my opinion, but season 2 did extremely well. And The Last of Us is number 6. Again, it is kind of difficult to gauge how this should really look considering the HBO channel cable side of things versus the HBO Max side of things. You can't really add them together, so it is incredibly difficult to get an accurate read on any HBO show. But even if you double it, it's not even cracking the first spot, which is reportedly what it was. HBO was saying, oh, it's the biggest thing streaming this weekend. That's definitely not the case, even if the cable numbers got the same amount of viewership minutes as the HBO Max side of things. It's just a confusing situation. Again, as much as I'd like to mock HBO in a situation like this, and as much as I despise The Last of Us as an adaptation, I can't do that in good conscience because this is just a confusing situation. The Last of Us 4 million viewership numbers do not corroborate with this insane threshold of over a billion minutes watched when you add in that Sunday initial few hours mark. I'm straight up just confused. I can't call out Hollywood as I normally love to do. I can't call anyone out. There's no real way to figure out who is at fault in this situation or to make these numbers make any sense. They cannot coexist. 4 million views cannot coexist with 1 point something odd billion minutes watched. They cannot coexist in any way, shape, or form, especially when you add in the cable side of things. I can't say which is true. I'd love to hear in the comments below if anyone can figure out why these numbers are so vastly different and how to corroborate them in any sort of logical and cohesive manner. This is just a very incredibly confusing situation. I don't know what this means for The Last of Us, HBO, or the Nielsen data as a whole, but I'll be keeping an eye on this situation to see if anybody can explain this insane situation, especially when it's compared to House of the Dragon's initial numbers. But anyway, that's all I have for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Anon.
Hey, yo, are you feeling what I'm doing up in here? Oh, I know you are. Do you miss all the good, compelling stories that we used to get back in Hollywood that they ain't putting down no more? I know you missing it. So check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues, baby. Book 1, Down in Flames. Book 2, Apocalypse Then. These are currently on sale. What are you waiting for? Get your hands on them. And we got Book 3, Kill the Dark, is coming down the pipeline. Just wait for all the good stuff that's dropping. You ain't gonna be disappointed, fam.